In today's video, we're going to be discussing covering the golf ball at impact and the difference between an iron and a driver. Make sure you check out this video. Welcome back to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, today in our indoor studio. And today's video, as I mentioned there in the intro, is all going to be about covering the ball at impact and the difference with that term when we're talking about an iron into a driver swing. The details for me are just coming on the bottom of the screen. If you haven't already, I'd love you guys to consider subscribing. Right now, we're going to jump into this one. So what we're going to be discussing here, as I mentioned, is covering the ball at impact. Now that could mean a couple of things, and on the video I filmed before on this, I was discussing it in terms of maintaining forward bend this way towards the golf ball, because this for me definitely wouldn't be covering the ball where I'm standing up and out of posture, early extending. So I was talking about tilting this way, but I was also talking from a face-on point of view in terms of getting over the top of the golf ball, getting a little bit more in line with it, compressing the golf ball here. And in the video, and I will put a link just here, so check that one out as well, I was just discussing irons, and I had a viewer's question, which is always a great way to get in touch. So please do comment below if you enjoyed this video and put some suggestions in there, videos you'd like to film or me to film. What I was discussing there was how the hips and the upper body would get a little bit over or just slightly past the golf ball into impact. So what I would feel here with a mid-iron in the downswing, so let's forget the backswing for a second, is that I would start with the ground up. So my pressure would be moving down into my lead side. There is a forward movement of our pelvis. And again, I've filmed a video talking about the hips and where they should be going on the downswing. So again, I'll just drop a link here, well worth checking out, very relevant to this subject. How the hips should be moving laterally forwards towards the target by around 4 inches. And what that would mean as I come down into impact is that with a mid-iron, the 7-iron that I've got here, I'd expect my pelvis to be slightly ahead of the golf ball, but I'd also like my sternum pretty much in line with the center of my lower body. So let's talk about belt buckle, belly button, and let's talk about sternum in terms of center of chest. Now I want those to be pretty well aligned with an iron, almost one on top of the other and slightly ahead of the golf ball to help this descending blow into the back of the golf ball. Now a lot of people get confused with that because actually my hands at that last position aren't traveling down, down, down into impact. What saves us kind of hitting the ground too much is our handle is actually moving up and inwards through impact in an ideal situation. So it is creating this pressure into my lead side. It is helping this downward blow, but that doesn't mean I'm thinking about chopping or throwing my arms downwards into the golf ball. It just means my lower body and upper body are working together to really get me into delivery position where I'm creating some forward shaftly. So that just means my handle of the golf club is a little bit ahead of the club head itself, de-lofting the golf club a little bit, which helps me add that compression, that efficiency, that energy transfer from club to ball that we really want to see. So what I would like to see, as I said there, in the downswing is the lower body starting first, and I would expect some pelvis movement, some movement, lateral movement towards the target with our lower body first before my upper body starts to join in. And it's only fractions of a second, but there is some lateral movement before there's some rotational movement. And at impact, my upper body and lower body are pretty well aligned and slightly ahead of the golf ball. So that's what I'm really looking for with a mid-iron. Now, how does that change into the driver, which is the real question I got there? And I'm just going to quickly pop it on a tee. Because I've got less loft, because I'm moving that ball more forwards, instinctively, we're going to feel like we're going to hit more level or slightly up on the ball. Now, for the majority of golfers, they should be striking up on it to not give up yardage. For the long hitters out there, the real high club head speed guys and girls, they can get away with perhaps a more neutral angle of attack. And in fact, on the PGA Tour, the men's PGA Tour, the average is a little bit on the way down. It's a little bit different on the ladies' tour. But they perhaps don't need to strike as much up as you would see your average amateur. Now, when you look at the long drive guys and girls competing in terms of obviously trying to smash the ball as far as possible, they're hitting massively up on it. So they're using very high tees, very low lofted drivers. They're really trying to optimize that high launch, low spin type of flight. But we all kind of are pretty happy with the fact that with the driver, the balls move more forwards towards my lead heel here, and I'm starting in a position where I am a little bit more behind the golf ball. So if anything at setup, I'm starting with about 55–60% of my pressure onto my trail foot, whereas with an iron, I'd want to be a little bit more even or slightly favouring my lead side at more like 55% onto lead foot. So there is a change in terms of the setup, which will dictate where I'm going to be at impact. But the difference in the downswing is, for me, not a conscious one, but I would want the same movement where, again, there is a lateral movement towards the target. You can start to see my pelvis is moving forwards, and then it's starting to rotate. But because the ball's gone more forwards, I'd expect to impact that my centre of hips belt buckle here is going to be more in line with the golf ball rather than in front. Okay, that does depend on where you're positioning the golf ball, perhaps what shot you're trying to hit. So if you're trying to hit down and fade the ball, an elite golfer, compared to up and in more into out, that's going to change a little bit your body dynamics. But I would expect you to be a little bit more in line with our lower body. The other change I'd expect to see, and that doesn't mean my pelvis hasn't moved forwards, it's still moved forwards by that 4 inches, it's just the ball was more forward. So now it's more in line rather than in front. But what I'd expect to see as a reaction, because the ball's on the tee and we've got a lower lofted golf club, is the upper body would start to react and tilt away from the target. Now, the other reason it reacts that way is we're going to swing a driver a little bit quicker. So we'd expect a good 12 miles an hour quicker than a mid-iron in terms of club head speed. We're going to be using a little bit more of those forces in the downswing. So the more I push down into my lead side with my lower body, more my upper body will start to react and tilt away from the target. And I'd expect to impact, although my pelvis, centre of pelvis here, my belt buckle would be about in line with the ball, I'd expect my centre of chest sternum to be slightly behind the golf ball, especially for an upward angle of attack that most golfers are better delivering. But for me, I don't know that it's a conscious thought. I think we're reacting to the ball being up in the air. I think we're reacting to a lower lofted golf club, and then the knowledge that perhaps we're not trying to take a divot, you know, with a driver in our hand, pretty basic knowledge there. But knowing that we're trying to create more of a sweeping motion, I think instinctively, yes, we'll get the same lower body movement, but instinctively our upper body will start to tilt a little bit more away from the target. And I just wanted to touch on, if you need more of an upward angle of attack, a good thought for you would almost be trying to feel like your right ear, or for me, my right ear, so your trail ear, one furthest away from the target, actually gets down a little bit lower towards the golf ball. That helps me create some neck tilts. Okay, so my head is starting to tilt away from the target. You'll see that drops my trail shoulder lower, my lead shoulder higher, and helps me get that sensation that my upper body is staying slightly behind the golf ball with the driver. So if you're struggling with a low ball flight, poor efficiency, and you want a more upward angle of attack with a driver, the feeling of keeping your head behind the golf ball, or perhaps tilting your head, is really going to help you. So let me go ahead and hit one here. I'm still clicked on with an iron image, so if I change it over, it's not going to make a lot of odds, but I've got the ball nearer my lead heel. I'm starting with a little bit more pressure. The feel is into my trail foot. I'm starting with a bit more tilt to my shoulders. So with an iron, I'd expect to see no more than 10 degrees of tilt and a little bit more than that with a driver. So I like to see about 8 or so with an iron, 12, maybe a little bit more in terms of the trail shoulder sitting lower than the lead shoulder. Again, we'll do that as we set our pressure more onto our back foot. We don't change our lower body position. We just tilt our upper body slightly away from the target. We're almost presetting impact. And what we're trying to get that sensation of with the driver is our lower body is moving towards the target, but my head is staying behind the golf ball. So I'm feeling that my lower body is moving forwards, but I'm just going to get the sensation that my nose is staying behind the ball, or perhaps if I want that real upward angle of attack, that my trail ear moves a little bit more towards the golf ball. So that was pretty good. A big high draw. I'm just hoping we get an angle of attack there. I didn't look at one with the iron, but I tend to hit down on the golf ball. I mean, with a 7 iron, I'll be downwards by 5-6 degrees. A fault of mine, if anything, is hitting too much on the way down. Whereas with the driver that I hit here, I do expect to be striking up on the golf ball. And a lot of that is down to the difference at impact. So I hit up on the golf ball by 4.6 degrees, and that's a big number, you know, so I really hit up on that golf ball. If you're not efficient with your driver, this is really going to help you, that upward angle of attack. So upwards by, as I said, 4.6 degrees, into out by 1.5. So a good recipe for a draw ball flight really there. And the feel for me was very similar with the lower body. I was just conscious that I was trying to keep my head behind the golf ball. If I was trying to hit a low ball flight into the wind, or perhaps trying to hit a lower fade, I would definitely get the sensation I'm a little bit more over the top of the golf ball with my upper body, but I definitely wouldn't want to get ahead of it. Now, it's quite hard to do that without losing balance anyway, as the ball's gone more forwards in your stance. So for me, it may not be a conscious thought of the difference between the iron and the driver, but just understanding the difference between there could help you. And as I said, if you hit your irons well, but you struggle with the driver, it might be that angle of attack is a little bit too much on the way down for the speed you generate. And actually those simple tips of allow the lower body to go forwards, but keeping the upper body back behind the golf ball could really help you with that feel perhaps of creating those neck tilts where your trail ear is getting a little bit closer to the ground. If this video has helped, as I mentioned at the start, hit the thumbs up, put some comments below, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Cheers guys, I'll see you next time.